When did you think that you might like to be an actor?
I didn't. It just sort of happened. It just sort of happened all by accident.
That's incredible.
Imagine a young actor's life flipped upside down by one unforgettable role. A role that threw him into a whirlwind of fame, controversy, and secrets kept hidden for decades.
We had some pretty wild parties.
What would be a wild party?
Well, we had gangster parties.
How long were you there? Almost 4 months.
4 months?
In this video, Christopher Atkins himself pulls back the curtain on the Blue Lagoon like never before, revealing jaw-dropping details that Hollywood didn't want you to know. From the wild casting demands to scandalous on-set secrets and a bold scene that shocked an entire generation, this is the real story behind the iconic film. What did he have to endure to make the Blue Lagoon the phenomenon it became? And how did one daring choice catapult him into the limelight with consequences that followed him for years? Brace yourself. You're about to uncover the shocking truth that redefines everything you thought you knew about the Blue Lagoon. The athlete who stumbled into fame. Christopher Atkins was not destined to be in Hollywood. The direction of his dreams led him in a very different direction. Growing up, Christopher was the classic all-American athlete, focusing more on sports than scripts. He dedicated himself to athletics, specifically swimming, in the hopes of making it big in the sports world. Intensive training and competition now had become part of the daily routine, fueled by exactly the same ambition that makes a person aim for the championships rather than film premieres. However, in life, sometimes something comes along, and his path was to alter in a manner that none could imagine. Athletic stardom was now going down the drain, as due to a knee injury, his future was up for consideration. Crushed yet determined, Christopher began surveying the horizon of more general pursuits outside the stadium. The family's forte was medicine, so to some degree that only seemed the logical next step into which to place his long-term interest. He commenced taking classes and researching potential interests in a medical profession, but envisioned an existence far better for his family's perception and expectation. But even as he pursued his studies, he somehow felt that he was to be destined for something bigger, something else, though he could have never imagined that that something would take a career on screen. He finally ended up in Hollywood by sheer luck, perhaps fate. It so happened that one day, an encounter caught the eye of a photographer with Christopher's clean-cut, all-American look and potential. It was then that the guy suggested he try modeling. He accepted without any intention of the grand plan, nor spotlight craving, imagining it'd be a pretty cool bit of fun making some spare cash. It was beyond his imagination when this led to a firestorm whirlwind into a world of fame. As he progressed through a handful of modeling jobs, Chris's pictures somehow ended up at Ford Modeling Agency and opened up doors he hadn't dreamed of knocking on. Soon, the young athletic model caught the eye of film casting agents for a film that was soon to astound Hollywood, The Blue Lagoon. Athletic background and boyish charm, topped with the sense of adventure, were going to work perfectly for the character being sought in the film. What had started out being an unexpected, even somewhat whimsical detour off the path of following a family's medical track brought him straight into the midst of the entertainment industry. Unbeknownst to him then, Christopher Atkins was destined to be one of the most discussed stars of his generation, thanks to a turn of fate that took an athlete to Hollywood. But little did he know, a single unexpected invitation would soon pull him off the sidelines and onto the biggest stage of his life. The audition that sealed his fate. Now, Christopher Atkins didn't even know that this could turn out to be life-changing when he attended this very first major audition for himself. At the time, it wasn't like he had even been an actor, let alone a Hollywood prospect at 18. This lad was actually a guy who began as a model months previous just out of curiosity. Not any great ambition, he tells me, but there is the case. He was looking around at rows of much more experienced young actors and thought he'd just play out the motions, get out of there, and go tell his friends that he tried. He could never have known this was not a typical casting call. It was the audition that sealed his fate. Christopher's laid-back nature and inherent charm were an immediate strike on the casting directors. Despite his lack of experience in acting, there was something about him that struck their attention, something authentic and raw. Callbacks came one after another, and each time the process became more intense. Months of repeated auditions finally made Christopher realize he was closer to landing the role than he ever could have imagined. He was going to get his big break in a way that felt surreal, almost as if he were caught up in a story written just for him. Just before the end of auditions, the directors made an unusual decision that would further make Christopher's journey unique. They wanted him to bring a blonde, curly wig to his final reading. It was an unusual request, but the production team had a vision for this lead character to be portrayed as a Greek Adonis in modern times, and they wanted to know if Christopher could be that person. When he returned wearing the wig, the transformation was astounding. He was of their vision. That last audition, wig and all, wiped away any doubts, and in that one instant, he locked up the role that would make him famous. It was quickly announced, and before he knew it, Christopher was no longer a regular guy with an accidental modeling gig. He was now cast in a lead role in a major motion picture. This turn was exciting but also frightening, for he knew it was one way into the unknown, for he would now become an actor that no one planned to be, his one shot at making history for the rest of his life. When news of his award begins to circulate, Christopher finds himself once again in a whirlwind of media and public attention, but this time the quiet life is weeks behind instead of ahead. He walks red carpets, sits for interviews, and attempts to navigate the frustrations of fame, all the while trying to stay grounded. Each passing day brought the reality of the fact that he was no longer a young man exploring his options, but an emerging star with expectations to meet. Christopher accepted the challenge, determined to prove that his success was not a fluke, but a testament to his talent and dedication. Thanks to how the small audition changed his life for the better and gave access to doing something he did not foresee spending the rest of his life doing. Isolated in Paradise. Christopher Atkins was on a flight to Fiji to join the crew for the location shoot of the Blue Lagoon. He couldn't think of anything other than movie sets everywhere. When he arrived, what could he see but a small and remote island in the broad ocean with wild landscapes sprawling all around? This place was not just a filming location. It was an isolated paradise without modern-day luxuries. Cast and crew lived in tents pitched on wooden platforms. There was a fight with nature and a life bereft of all the normal comfort of everyday life. A dream vacation for most sounds, but it's anything but that. It's rough and relentless, calling for resilience and adaptability. The location was superb, but isolation was a unique challenge in itself. Supplies were very limited, and what one had to make do with was what was at hand. Unannounced rainstorms swept through, and the scorching sun made filming an exhausting ordeal. Everything they needed, from food to film equipment, had to be brought to the island, which added another layer of difficulty to an already intense shoot. For Christopher, who was entirely new to acting, the physical demands were a shock. For him, every day on that island was a test to his stamina as well as adaptability. So the project actually felt like a survival mission rather than a film shoot. But despite the harsh conditions, the cast and crew got closer. In the absence of the paraphernalia of modern living, they had to support each other in getting around the problems of living on an island. The Aussie crew, being known to be very resourceful, were essential in getting everything going and running well. They built sets, managed equipment, and sorted out logistical nightmares to become the backbone of the project. Christopher would often attribute the crew's know-how and camaraderie to make the difficult conditions bearable and even inspiring. This tight-knit bond transformed the experience into something more than a movie. It became a life-changing adventure. For Christopher, Fiji was not just a location, it was a chapter in his life. From a complete unknown to understanding what it takes to bring a movie to life, he progressed through grit and dedication. Fiji's beautiful landscape served as the backdrop for the Blue Lagoon, but also marked his initiation into the demands of the acting world. Isolated in paradise, he found a new appreciation for the craft and a realization that this road was where he belonged. the price of overnight fame. Overnight, this hype propelled Christopher Atkins out of obscurity to fame overnight with the Blue Lagoon. However, in that very same night and subsequent days, it came as a storm of expectations and pressures he hadn't been prepared for. Attention is hot. Everyone from fans and media and critics wanted his share of him. They cut open every detail concerning his performance, life, and appearance. It was too much for any person to bear, not to mention someone still in the beginning of exposure. What began as this fun, almost accidental discovery into acting soon became this game of high-wire balancing under the constant barrage of attention fame brings. Themes in the film proved to be quite provocative. Not only were Christopher's own scenes bold, but controversy soon followed praise. While he had expected the film to attract attention, he had not prepared himself for the media storm that followed. Interviewers dwelled on the most contentious aspects of the film, and Christopher found himself responding to very personal questions regarding his nudity on screen and the nature of his role. Friends and family were similarly shocked by the sudden attention, with his mother famously commenting on seeing him in a way she never could have imagined. This invasion into his private life felt so overwhelming that a dream opportunity turned into a double-edged sword. Fame brought pressure to maintain an image, something Christopher had never been trained to negotiate. Overnight, he turned into a symbol, someone who had to represent the success of the film as well as manage public opinion. Studios wanted him to talk up the film night and day, and fans wished him to be that guy whom they had fallen in love with on the silver screen. The carefree young man who once changed into modeling was now weighed down by the burden of an entire industry's expectations. It was a life from which he had so recently strayed, and one for which even the thrill of stardom couldn't make up. Through it all, Christopher learned hard lessons about the price of fame. He had to find his own way to balance his career with his personal life, facing the demands of Hollywood while trying to hold on to the person he was before the spotlight found him. The experience left him both thankful for the opportunities it brought in its wake and wary of its cost, marking life for him in a way he would bear long after the buzz around the Blue Lagoon had faded. The nude scene controversy, probably one of the most unforgettable and controversial aspects of the Blue Lagoon, was its bold portrayal of nudity, a decision that would forever alter Christopher Atkins's career. At just 18, Christopher was asked to push boundaries that were rarely crossed, especially for young male actors at the time. Scenes indeed had to be as raw and uncooked as possible. The scenes should have had little imagination because two castaways discovered life on a deserted island. It was a bold jump for Christopher as he played that role because the role brought great responsibility, which weighed down on him from the very start. Such moments of vulnerability and exposure by male actors were rarely witnessed on Hollywood screens. This was virgin territory, both for the actor and for the film industry. Christopher knew it, and Randall Kaiser, the film director, took all the required measures while shooting these sensitive scenes. Kaiser made sure that the crew on set while shooting is limited so that this scene could be shot in a very private and respectful atmosphere for the young actor. Such an environment helped Christopher overcome the difficulty of stripping naked, not only to expose himself physically, but also emotionally, from being open to himself and the audience. It did not take much time before the reaction to these scenes took their toll. It was for those provocative themes that the Blue Lagoon attracted an audience, and the movie itself became a cultural lightning rod for its boldness. Critics and fans argued both ways about the acceptability of such brazen images, some hailing the movie's artistic audacity while others condemned it. The heavy scrutiny that followed made pressure an unexpected burden for Christopher. Though these scenes helped him establish his career, controversy followed with waves that could not allow him to distinguish between his personal identity and that of the character on screen. Christopher confessed that even though those scenes were hard, they finally framed his opinion about fame, privacy, and Hollywood expectations. He was torn between fulfilling the artistic intent of the role while dealing with personal implications of being so exposed to the world. Such decisions to participate in scenes that would be considered a breakthrough in Hollywood marked the turning point of his life and would forever set the tone for his future in Hollywood as a symbol of daring choices in the film industry. What followed was an intense wave of fame and scrutiny that would test his resilience like never before. Under the spotlight's harsh glare, Christopher Atkins wasn't prepared for the constant glint of the media follow-up over the Blue Lagoon. A dream come true turned out to be the two-edged sword. Everyone in his life criticized every aspect of his. Overnight, he became an overnight celebrity, and there was much public obsession toward him and his personal lives, as well as his stand on the provocative role for which he was cast in the movie. This new openness was thrilling and at the same time overwhelming because Christopher faced the reality of constant scrutiny. For an up-and-coming young actor thrust into fame, the spotlight was as bright as it was unforgiving. Media frenzy proved to be much more overwhelming than what Christopher had in his mind. He anticipated that there would be a degree of attention, but wasn't prepared for how intrusive it was going to be. It was like the controversy that seemed to dominate each of his interviews. They wanted to know how daring the movie was. The press sought some pretty intimate information regarding even how comfortable he was with those nude scenes. He started as an item in the entertainment columns to talking heads within and in houses all across America as everyone became chattering around it. His role drew opinions from friends, family, and even strangers who reacted to his performances. It was as if he had lost his personal identity in the on-screen persona. This bright spotlight that shone on the movie also came with the expectation of fitting into Hollywood's mold. But underneath all the glamour was a struggling young man attempting to assemble himself into some version the world wanted as he went along trying to reconcile that person with whom he really was. There were expectations on the table from the studios and even the fans regarding how he should come forward, and Christopher was intended to fit the picture which the Blue Lagoon had made him. The scrutiny went to the level of his off-screen activities. Everything about him began to seem like a performance. Through all these experiences, Christopher learned the cost of fame. Living in public had its advantages, but it was accompanied with constant vigilance, where every move could be amplified and made into something else. Being under the glaring spotlight taught him the necessity of protecting his private life and being wary of fame. It was a toll it took, but the experience gave him an invaluable perspective on the realities of stardom, a perspective that helped him manage his career with resilience and a clearer understanding of who he wanted to be, beyond the roles he played. A chaotic adventure. After the hit movie The Blue Lagoon, Christopher Atkins really had to dive into his wildly different next project with the pirate movie. Of course, it wasn't just any film. It's quirky, offbeat, and even more, at times, a musical comedy set, where Christopher was really obligated to get far out of himself and out of his element, singing and dancing too. In fact, sword fighting and singing on screen became one of its challenges for Christopher. In itself, that was a challenge. Serious, dramatic acting to lighthearted, comedic flair. But he embraced it all with excitement and enthusiasm. Little did he know, though, that the pirate movie would have its own set of unpredictable, chaotic hurdles in store. The production became an adventure as chaotic as the story itself. From the very start, it was under-budgeted and logistically cumbersome, so that the whole production came into danger. Then, mid-production, the director changed, and chaos reigned within the cast and crew as they scrambled to adjust. Suddenly, scenes were reimagined, schedules rearranged, and the whole tone of the film was re-examined. To Christopher, the whirlwind meant constant adjustments to new directions, and endured the stress of a production that seemed lurching from one crisis to the next. Chaos is further added in the form of physically challenging scenes, filmed in Australian weather conditions. Under the blaring hot sun one day and torrents of storms another, the best efforts Christopher and Christy McNichol gave were to ignore the capricious ways of Mother Nature while not forgetting in their acting roles how much humor and charm were important. Yet during those hot and stormy times, they both had the best bonding ever, so this went through to their movie also. A certain charm that they exude in their on-screen appearances, an anchor of levity amidst all the behind-the-scenes hitches. It premiered with the pirate movie. This was not as warm as the team had expected. Critics were pretty mean, and the film also failed in the box. Another harsh reality check, as far as Christopher's perspective goes. His hard effort may not always have to be rewarded. However, something miraculous began to happen through the years. Fans rediscovered the film due to its quirky humor and catchy songs. The pirate movie became a cult classic, and Christopher started hearing from the audiences who loved its unique charm. What began as a chaotic and unpredictable project eventually became a part of his career cherished, at times proving that sometimes the wildest journeys create the most lasting memories. From box office flop to cult classic. The pirate movie got such negative reviews at its debut and tanked so poorly at the box office, but for Christopher Atkins, that meant a pill that tasted really bitter. For sure, after making waves about the Blue Lagoon, he did go all out and supported this one. Big waves were expected this time, but little did they know on which shores of taste do people want to end up. Neither did critics. They declared it an odd, failed experiment and sent the pirate movie to the mainstream periphery, leaving Christopher to cope with the pain of his first major flop. But as time would pass, it was exactly these qualities that had been scorned by the critics that would give this film a new, rather unique appeal for moviegoers. It was drawn to the humor, to the catchy musical numbers, and to its unapologetically campy charm. Its offbeat, carefree nature made this film a strong candidate for cult status, and an increasing fan base embraced it for its nostalgic escapism. There was something about the film that audiences found that the more slick Hollywood productions lacked, a refreshing flavor of eccentricity. Christopher began to see the movie in a different light, as the fans rallied around this offbeat style of movie. Throughout the years, however, the pirate movie graduated from box office dud to cult status. While midnight shows with sing-alongs and fans congregating for this particular movie showed it as an experience as much as an achievement, when audiences rejoiced with each catchy tune or zinged one-liner. Fans themselves embraced Chris for keeping what they found in the pirate movie was truly something he should preserve: the nostalgia. What once seemed to be a blunder in his career now has become a fond memory, as viewers loved all the movie's peculiarities and flaws that were disliked by critics initially. This dynamic change for Christopher reminded him how uncertain the world of entertainment is. The pirate movie had taught him that success did not always look like it did in the box office or on the pages of the critics' reviews. The success sometimes lies in doing something so memorable that it's still around after all the years have passed. Loving the cult classic status his film took on, Christopher grew to understand the power behind a project that was often chaotic and challenging, but that carved out a special space in the hearts of very devoted fans. Australia, a second home. Christopher Atkins feels a great love for Australia, since by filming the Blue Lagoon and the pirate movie on location, he learned in transformative ways. Although shot on a distant island of Fiji, most of the shoot was in Australia, where they made an earthy camaraderie filled with a spirit and work ethic which seemed fresh to Christopher, whose lasting impression was taken with him forever. The laid-back nature and the strength in the character of the Australians was what kept him going when things seemed their worst. In time, he realized that this was home, the warm personality and the spirit of adventure. Christopher again returned to film for the pirate movie, thus putting him even more deeply interwoven with the country. Landscapes of Australia, from sunlit beaches to wild outback lands, ensnared his imagination in every way, showing him rugged beauty beyond adventurous roles that Christopher had taken on for himself. He got integrated into the culture of making friends who would stay in his life for the period he spent there, and stayed with him throughout that journey, especially among locals and members of the crew, a second family. So life was exciting and so full of surprises on location and life in Australia. The two were not far apart when it came to considering the place as one's work destination or just home. Life outside the film shoot saw Christopher fall deeply in love with the way Australians lived. He loved merely jumping through the Great Barrier Reef and surfing the big lands while experiencing the country's wild nature. This kind of freedom and intimacy with nature kept him going all these years after doing his shoot that was in the past and ended ages many years back. Amicability of the culture makes him bond well within his shot and makes the country look more vibrant by having a flavor, making it really very comfortable to be inspired from. For Christopher, every visit was much the same coming home. This was a place where he felt completely relaxed and truly understood what it meant to be part of something absolutely special. Today, speaking about Australia, Christopher addresses it warmly as a second home. Country holds memories that aren't only related to professionalism, but also shape who a person is on a personal level. For this reason, he feels there is an element of an unseen hand in the pull of the country and people toward him. He can very well consider this place his permanent home. For Christopher, Australia isn't just some film location or other vacation destination, but a country that had fed his soul, offered friendships, and reminded him of life and its simple pleasures beyond the bright lights of Hollywood. But beyond the adventures and lasting friendships, Christopher faced his greatest battles and found redemption in the embrace of family and a life of sobriety. Redemption, sobriety, and family. After the whirlwind of fame and the ups and downs of his early career, Christopher Atkins faced a battle that was perhaps the most personal challenge of his life, his fight against addiction. The Hollywood pressures and intense public attention had taken their toll and led him down a not-so-easy path. But in a courageous turn, Christopher decided to fight head-on his issues with sobriety. It was hard, though. He needed that survival, self-realization, and unshakable determination to break loose from the cycle. And yes, today, he stands proudly with over 3 decades of sobriety that defined his personal growth, redrawing his priorities altogether. Sobriety brought Christopher a clear outlook on life, fame, and what really mattered in his life. From the limelight, he moved on to something much deeper, his family. Having children was something he never accomplished through any film. His children became the center of his life, grounding him as fame couldn't do. He welcomed fatherhood and dedicated himself to being an involved and supportive figure for his children. Through the highs and lows, his family gave him stability and love that fueled recovery and growth. As the children grew up, Christopher's role changed, but his commitment to his family never did. He witnessed them pass through milestones, guided them, and shared everyday moments that became more precious than any Hollywood accolade. And in the last years, he embraced another fulfilling role, that of a grandfather. Spending time with his grandchildren, he has found himself valuing family even more, thus giving him an opportunity to pass on wisdom and share long-lasting memories. Life as a family has been able to fill his heart in ways that no career achievements ever could. For Christopher, family and sobriety marked the final redemption. These 2 pillars will give him strength and clarity for building a life of love, responsibility, and resilience. He finally looks at his journey and realizes that celebrity status may have given him the recognition, but family and sobriety have given him fulfillment. And from the battles and triumphs, Christopher Atkins rediscovered himself again, and to a life that cherishes the simplest and most profound joys, being a father, a grandfather, and overcoming the dark moments. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Christopher Atkins' incredible journey. If you enjoyed uncovering the untold stories behind the Blue Lagoon and the pirate movie, don't forget to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your favorite part of his story. Make sure you subscribe for more fascinating Hollywood insights and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. And before you go, check out the next video on your screen for more exclusive content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.